Welcome to the summit, Being Alive in the Heart of Life. And I can now introduce you to Peter Russell. Welcome, Peter.
Lovely. Thank you. Lovely to be here with you.
Thank you for being here. And we are going to be talking about your new book, and it's Letting Go of Nothing, Relax Your Mind, and Discover the Wonder of Your True Nature. And
Yes.
All about who we are beyond the so-called ego or the conditioned mind. But first, I want to say a few words about you. You studied theoretical physics and experimental psychology, and you also have a postgraduate in computer science, and you study a lot of mathematics as well at Cambridge. And so you, in all that and all the books you've written quite a few books. I've also read the Waking Up in Time and From Science to God, which are brilliant. I can see you go all the way around, like you go into climate change and what's going to happen with Earth and human beings, and also the consciousness of everything. And you're also into meditation and the brain, how it affects the brain and how we see reality. And so it's very profound how you go really deep into all these matters. So consciousness has always been what you have been interested in. And what is consciousness? So maybe we should start with that.
What is consciousness?
Yeah.
It's the wrong question. I'll tell you why. Because when we have the question, what is consciousness, we start looking for something out there we can call consciousness, and it takes off in the wrong direction. And it's partly the wrong question because it's using a noun, consciousness. And when we add NESS to a word in English, we're taking an adjective and we're turning it into just an abstract noun in order to talk about it. So, we talk about happiness. Happiness is the state or quality of being happy. Ness means the state or quality of. So happiness is the state or quality of being happy. Sadness, the state or quality of being sad. Softness, the state or quality of being soft. And happiness doesn't actually exist. It's just a way of talking about things. Nor does softness exist. It's just a way of talking about things. It's the same with what we call consciousness. It's a way of talking about things. And it's basically saying the state or quality of being conscious. So the question really is what is the state or quality of being conscious? And when we phrase it that way, we don't have to go looking for an answer because it's something we all know. I mean, each and every one of us is conscious. We are aware. Whatever's going on, even in sleep, when we're dreaming, we're aware of our dreams. We're always, if there's any experience, we're aware. So each of us knows what it's like to be aware. We're aware of this now. We're aware of my voice, what you're seeing, what you're feeling in your body. We're always aware. So what it's really pointing to is something that we all know personally. And so the question really is to point us back to ourselves and to our being aware. And when it's phrased as what is consciousness, which happens, in so many scientific circles and philosophical circles, people are looking in the wrong direction. They're looking to describe something, to define it, to explain how it arises from the brain or whatever, because they're making it something. But consciousness is not a thing. It's not a thing to be known, to be discovered, to be understood. It is just the truth that each and every one of us is conscious, period.
Yeah. Yes. And for human beings, we are conscious in a very complex way comparison to maybe trees or animals or the rest of nature.
Yeah. Yes, being conscious is not unique to human beings. I mean, anybody who's got an animal pet, a cat or a dog or a horse, clearly they are aware of their world, maybe more aware in some ways because like a dog hears sounds we can't hear and smells many, many more smells that we never smell. The difference with us is that we have language, we have thoughts, we think to ourselves. I don't think a dog has thoughts. It doesn't sit and think, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Is it going to rain or not? Am I going to be taken for a walk? What are they going to give me for food? It doesn't think like we do. I mean, it may think in images. And so human consciousness is different insofar as in our experience, not only do we experience the world like other animals do, we also experience our own internal world. We experience our thoughts, our feelings, all of that. So that's what makes us different from other animals.
Yeah. And your book, Letting Go of Nothing, you have it right next to you. Can you show it?
Yes, certainly. Ta-da. Yeah, Letting Go of Nothing. And there's that sub, yeah. Great.
Yeah. And letting go of nothing, is that, so we humans are very complex, and we can make up stories, we can make meaning of life, we can interpret our world, we are self-aware, we know we are conscious, and so it's in that way we're very complex, you could say, a very complex biological function.
Right, yes. And very complex mentally. I think other animals are much simpler mentally. We complicate matters for ourselves. We create a lot of discontent and things for ourselves when none is needed. So, in a way, we all our thinking in a way spoils our life for ourselves in a way. I often think it'd be much nicer just to be a dog, simply, an animal simply aware, which in a way I think is what all the great masters are talking about, just being aware without all that overlay of worry, concern, and planning and everything else.
Yeah. So your book, Letting Go of Nothing, is an interesting title, because often we hear that we have to let go of everything, and then we can see what we are, or the
right.
Yeah. So letting go of nothing or no thing.
Yes, letting go of no thing. Yes, we normally think of letting go of things, and in some circles, letting go of everything, being a complete ascetic. We don't need to let go of things. We don't need to change our life. We're not actually having to remove things or get rid of things. We're not even really letting go of thoughts or feelings. Ultimately, what we're letting go of is the mindset, if you like, the lens through which we see the world. And that is not a thing. I mean, we don't see the lens normally. I mean, if you're looking through, rose-tinted glasses, you see the world with, rose tint, but you don't see the lens. And it's the same with us. We see the world, we see what's going on, we experience our thoughts, we experience our feelings, but we don't see, if you like, the lens through which we're looking at the world. And so what we're letting go of is a way of seeing. It's really a change of mind that's happening when we let go. It's a change of mind. So we're letting go of a way of seeing, and that is not a thing. So we're letting go of no thing. What we're letting go of is not a thing. Hence the sort of the title, Letting Go of Nothing. But it's also, another sense is we're letting go to nothing as well. It's also part of it.
Yeah, and what is that to nothing? What is that?
We're not letting go to, again, something else. We're just allowing ourselves to come back to being. We're not trying to get somewhere else when we let go. We're just letting go of the mindset and just coming back to just that beingness. So we're not letting go to something else. When we let go, what we normally find is a sense of ease, a sense of relief, sometimes a sense of lightness. Where it's that shift in being that we notice.
Yeah. So it's letting go of what we usually are attached to, and then see that beneath that there's something that's always there, and that is aware.
Yeah. And we're not letting go of what we're attached to. We're letting go of our attachment to it, which is slightly different. So we're letting go of the inner mental process. We're letting go of our attachment to it rather than letting go of the thing itself. Yeah. Sorry, and you were saying in the question.
Yeah, but and that's beautiful that we don't have to give up everything. We can live our life like we always have.
Yes.
But it's a shift in perception, you could say. Yeah, it's a whole paradigm shift, actually, because we're coming from being conscious and not from the self-centered separate self.
Right. And so that's the separate self, what I sometimes call the ego mind, is always taking us out into the world in some way or another, either doing things, but also just worrying about things or planning things or whatever it is. The ego mind, it's there actually to help us survive. It's there to keep us safe, keep us secure. So it's always looking into the world. And so most of our thinking is directed outwards. And so when we're letting go, we tend to let go of that being interested, being concerned with, or being attached to the outer world. And when we do, we begin to just sink back and come closer to ourselves, to our true nature. So we're just returning to ourself in a way when we do that.
Yeah. So there's nothing really to do in a way, because it's like it's often heard that it's an unlearning rather than a learning, because we are already it. It's just a matter of
exactly. One of my favorite quotes is from Lin Chi, who was the founder of Chinese Zen, one of the schools of Chinese Zen, who said, "Nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to be." And that's something we can understand, but I think it's also a realization when people do really let go. They realize there wasn't anywhere to get to, because what we're letting go of are all the things that veil or hide our true nature. So we're not gaining anything, but we're just removing the veils, what overshadows our natural sense of being. So we're coming back to our natural sense of being. So because there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go. So we're just coming, in fact, we're doing the opposite. We stop trying to get anywhere or stop trying to do anything. We come back into this more easy, relaxed state and begin to notice that inner quietness, the inner stillness.
Yeah. And then in that stillness, does something happen in that where like you're eternal, you're now, you're present, that's what you always hear, right? And it's like, is that what happens when you relax your mind, and then you discover this nature that you are?
Right. Yeah. I think there's layers of what happens. The first thing that happens is you become more aware of the present moment. If you're caught up in thinking about something or whatever it is, when you let go, it's like first of all, it's there's a world out there. I can hear the birds, or I can feel my body. There's something going on in my body. You become more aware of the present moment. That's the sort of first layer. And then as you begin to quieten down, you begin to notice that sense of being, presence that's always there. It's what we call I, but it's not the ego I. It's not I, Peter Russell, author, British, blah, 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 blah. It's not that. It's that sense of I that's always been there. That's nothing to do with my history or what I do or what I think or feel. But it's that sense of I that is aware of you right now, the same I that was aware of yesterday, 10 years ago, when I was a kid, that same sense of I, it's always been there, but we don't normally notice it because our attention is directed outwards. So as we begin to come back to ourselves, we begin to notice, yes, here I am. It's like coming home. We come home to this sense of being, which has always been there, but we don't normally notice. So again, we're not discovering something new. We're just removing the blocks to the awareness of what is already there.
Yeah. So we let go of no thing, and we let go of all the things that we attach to, but it's almost like we also let go of the whole world. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what I am in the world. I can just enjoy my life, and because it's all an illusion, or it's not the real reality. It's my perception.
Right. Several things here. First of all, the world, I don't think the world is an illusion. Not at all. It's very, very real. If I get hit by a bus coming down the street, that's no illusion. That's real. I don't know what people mean when they say the world is an illusion. What is true is we each have our own perception of the world. We each interpret our world differently. So the world itself, I don't think, is an illusion. And it's not about not doing anything in the world. The nothing to do is not about we don't need to do anything in the world. Some people see it that way. It's more about there's nothing to do in order to come back to our true nature. It's our doing that takes us away from our true nature. So the statement there's nothing to do is only related to, if you like, that process of coming back to noticing who we are. There's nothing to do for that. Any doing gets in the way of that. That's what it refers to. There's lots of things we need to do in the world, lots of things we need to change. We can be as actively engaged in the world as any time, and maybe more actively engaged when we're not distracted by all the things going through our heads unnecessarily. So there's lots to do in the world. And related to that, people often say, well, does accepting the present mean I have to accept what's going on? I have to accept injustice. I have to accept the homeless. I have to accept, whatever my partner's doing that I don't like. No, it doesn't. Accepting the present only means accepting your experience in the present. And we can't do anything else but accept. If we're feeling sad, accept it. If we're feeling annoyed, accept it. If we're feeling wonderfully happy, accept it. We can't do anything about our experience in the present. So that's what it refers to, because what we often do is we resist our experience. Oh, I wish I weren't feeling this way. Doesn't do any good wishing you weren't feeling this way. Accept your experience, allow it in, notice how you're feeling, and that gives us a much better basis for which to come out into the world.
Yeah, so it's letting be, like you also write in your book, about letting be those different emotions, whatever happens.
Yeah. Yes. In fact, I reinterpret letting go as letting in and letting be. We think of letting go as trying to get rid of something, some thought, some feeling, some attachment. And so we try to do something. But it's not about that. The way to let go, what I found in my own life, is first of all, let in the experience. So if you're feeling, let's say, anger, it's something I think we can all relate to. We've all felt that at times. Instead of trying to suppress it or stop it, we say, I've got to let go of it, meaning I've got to get rid of it. Don't do the opposite. Let it in. First of all, let in what it feels like and come back to the body. We tend to go into our heads like, what's it feeling like in the body? You say you're angry. There's probably a lot of thoughts going on, a lot of story about what the other person did or didn't do. That's all the story. But then there's the feeling in the body. And it's interesting, when we talk about emotions, we use the word feeling for an emotion, and we use feeling for a sensation in the body. So let in what's happening in the body, allow it in, and then let it be, which means accepting it. Allow in the experience and accept it. And then things start to happen. Often if we're not resisting it, it often begins to soften. We may begin to see more what it was about. Sometimes it just begins to gently dissolve. But whatever it is, or sometimes we may see, oh, this is coming from something that happened way back in the past. It's nothing to do with the present situation. But I've just found as a general principle with anything we're wanting to let go of, to take the approach of letting in the experience, whatever it is, letting in the experience and letting it be. And then the letting go can happen much more spontaneously. It really paves the way for letting go to happen.
Yeah, letting it in and letting it be. Yeah. And then you also have the term pause.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is, I think, the simplest and one of the most valuable practices we can each do in our life. And it means just to pause for a few seconds and notice how it is to pause. Notice what your experience is. It means to pause, not just pause what you're doing, but also to pause your thinking. You notice what thoughts are going through your mind, whatever it is, and just choosing in that moment not to follow those thoughts anymore, and just to pause the thinking and notice how that feels. And what you're going to notice probably is you become more aware of the present moment. You might become more aware of what's happening in your body, and you'll notice other fainter thoughts going on in the background. And then just pause those, and just choosing to pause whatever's going through the mind. And when we do that, we just gradually begin to sink back closer to our own being. And I like that because it's something you can do, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, many, many times a day. And as we do, we gradually become more and more familiar with that inner state of being and the quietness and stillness and ease and relief that's there when we do that. So it's a practice I recommend to everybody. I mean, it's something everybody can do, particularly between two things, between, getting up from your emails to go and make tea or something. In that process, you already paused what you're doing. Just stop, pause your thinking a bit. And it's a wonderful experience. We just gradually become more and more familiar with that quality of beingness, which we're missing through our busyness.
Yeah. And also by pausing, you're kind of relaxing your mind, you could say, right?
Yes, you're relaxing the mind and relaxing the attention. We're not focusing on anything. When we relax the mind, what we're really doing is relaxing the attention, because the attention gets focused on something. And so when we're pausing, we're not focusing on what's happening in our mind or anything. So we're just becoming more relaxed. It's about the attention becoming relaxed.
Yeah. And then there's also a wisdom in us. There's like a natural wisdom that can flourish.
Exactly. We all have, yes, and in what I call our innate wisdom, our natural wisdom of what is right, what is wrong, how to do things. But that natural wisdom gets usurped by the ego mind, which thinks it knows best. And it wants us to do things, and it gets insistent about what to do. So when we leave that behind, the closer we come back to our true nature, the more that innate wisdom, our natural wisdom, can shine through and guide us. And as I pointed earlier, our natural wisdom is a much more compassionate, understanding, caring way of being.
Yeah. And also free will. And you use the term free won't.
Yes. When we think of free will, the way it's normally considered is the will to choose something. The whole philosophical question is, do we have free will? Do we really choose things, or is it all predetermined? That's the big, philosophical discussion. But it's about freedom to do something, freedom to do something, make something happen, whatever it is. In our society, we talk about, the freedom of speech, freedom to where you live. Free won't is almost the opposite. And free won't is a choice we have. Again, it's a choice, but it's not a choice to do something. It's a choice not to do something. And the choice is not to follow our thoughts. So when you find you're getting caught up in some story that's just causing you distress that's not necessary, or some other thought, we could all have the power to just exercise what I call is free won't. And free won't is, I'm not going to go there. I'm simply not going to go there in my mind. If I see a thought that's going to cause me trouble or other people trouble, that's not a loving thought, I can just exercise free won't and choose not to go there, just to pause that thought. It may come back again later. It's not a question of eradicating it. But whenever we find ourselves being grabbed by some thought like that, we can exercise free won't. I won't go there in my mind. I'm going to leave that thought behind. And that, to me, is the real freedom we have. Whether we have free will in what we do, who knows? But we all have free won't in terms of choosing not to follow a certain thought. And when we do, we save ourselves getting caught up in where that thought might have led us, or wishing we hadn't done something, or whatever it is. So exercising it leads to a much more harmonious life.
Yeah. And it's nice that, because oftentimes we just feel so powerless, but at least I can follow my heart. I don't have to follow all these instructions I grew up with, or I can listen to my inner self and my wisdom. So that's a beautiful thing that we have that power, at least.
Yeah, exactly. And even when we have that thought, I am powerless, that can be a thought that leads us to feel upset or depressed or despondent or sad or whatever. But that's just another thought we can choose not to follow. When we have that thought of I am powerless, we can exercise free won't and say, okay, but I'm not going to go there, because following that thought is just going to make me upset. So there's no need to follow that thought and make myself upset. Let me get on and look at where I do have influence in the world and what I can do in the world.
Yeah. So that's a nice thing, that we have our own heart we can always lean on.
Yes. Our heart, what we call our innate wisdom. Yes, it's there to support us and guide us. Yeah.
And it's also who we are, right? Like, I know in your book, From Science to God, you also, you talk about how perception of life, a human perception is actually not reality, that we cannot know reality because we can only see the world through our human senses.
Yes.
So who knows what reality actually is? We have a human reality in a human world.
Right.
That's real for us humans, but we never really know what reality is. So
no, reality in a way is far, far more than we ever realize, but also far, far less. I mean, it's far, far more. If you look at, another creature, we talked about dogs, their reality, because they can see and smell, hear and smell stuff. We don't, they have a different reality. Or, think of a bat, which goes by sound. That has a very different reality that we don't have. So in some senses, what we experience is just a tiny slice of reality. But even then, what we experience is just what our brains have created for us as a picture of what is out there. So, if I'm seeing a tree, I'm seeing green color. I'm seeing a leaf. I'm seeing green. There's no green light. There's light of a certain frequency, and even that we don't really understand what that means. But light of a certain frequency hits the eye. It goes back to the back of the brain. The brain processes it and puts it all together, and I see a tree or a leaf. But that has come out of the brain, taking the information it gets from the world and from it building up a picture of what is out there. And then what I experience is the picture the brain has created for me. And because we have similar brains, it seems that, you create a similar picture in your mind, because we can have a conversation about the tree and, agree on it mostly. So, we're each creating our experience of reality, and there's a consistency between people. So we think that is what is real, but you ask a bat and it will tell you something completely different.
Yeah. So there is no actual reality, because there may be, but we just, as humans, we just don't know it, other than,
we don't know it. Even when we talk about physics, talks about particles and things, they're just words we use to describe, that when we do a certain experiment, we measure something called energy or mass or spin. They're just labels we give things. And I think in the end, all we can say is there's a vast field of information out there. It's just incredibly, right down to the smallest particle, to the biggest galaxy. There's information. The universe is information everywhere. And we are receiving a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of that information. And then from that, creating this picture. And we believe that is reality. It's not. It's our picture of a tiny, tiny slice of reality.
Yeah. And then we judge everything, from this reality that we have, and then we put our own personal lenses also. And so I can see it's almost like life. What is life? I don't know. I don't understand it. I won't know it, but I'm living it, and it'll just live itself through me.
Well, we are life. We are life. We are alive. I am part of life. I am a living being, and it's always living through me. But whether it gets channeled by my fears and doubts and worries or planning or whatever it is, desires and things, that's then channeling the flow of life in a certain direction, or when we're more free of that, life can flow through us in a different way. But we're always alive, and we can let go of any questions about what is life or all that stuff, and just get on with the basic question is whatever it is from a philosophical point of view. The question, I think, is how can I live in a more kind, caring, harmonious way with other people and with the rest of the planet? That I think is what we all should be talking about, is how do I live this life?
Yeah, and that's consciousness is what we all are at the deepest level, you could say, or even at this level. It's like, okay, I'm sharing all this with everybody. We are actually the same. Although we are different, we're also the same. So
yeah, deep down, I think we are the same. I mean, you and I are very, very different in terms of our background, all that stuff. I know hardly anything about you. However, that sense of I-ness we've been talking about, that sense of I am that is always there, has no particular qualities. It's just that sense of being. And so I presume that how it feels for me is exactly how it feels for you. So when you tune into that sense of being, that sense of I am, whatever you want to call it, inner presence, how you experience that is, I think, how I experience it and how everybody else experiences it. So that deepest level of self is universal in the sense that we all experience it the same way. So in that sense, I do know you. I know you very well indeed at that deep level. I don't know the surface you, but at that deep level of how it actually feels deep down to be you, I know that very well. So in that level, we all share a very common experience.
And if that's what we are at the deep level, then it's like, well, why don't we act as that? Be compassionate to one another, like the golden rule. And
yeah. Yes, I mean, if we recognize we're all the same deep down, then the golden rule says, we all want the same thing as well. We all want to be happy, to be loved. None of us want to be attacked or rejected or criticized. So the golden rule says that is how we should treat each other. How I want to be treated is how we should treat each other, because deep down, we're all exactly the same. But then what happens is our fears, our concerns, our needs, our desires, all that stuff gets in the way, takes over. And there's times when that's important. I mean, just to be clear, there's times when we really do need to look after ourselves because there is some danger, some fear, or some need, or some desire. It's very important. But a lot of the time, it's just created in our minds. We create this stuff in our minds, get worried about it, start trying to solve problems that will probably never, ever happen. And that takes us out of our beingness. And so that's why we need practices like the pause or like meditation, any practice which actually brings us back to ourselves. Because and to keep on coming back as often as we can, many, many times a day throughout our life. And we keep coming back to here, coming back to being, then gradually we become more familiar with that. And the other stuff has less and less power over us. But for most people, it's a gradual process.
Yeah. So from your personal experience, because you were into the books and textbooks and experiments and a scientist, but at the same time, you were also into the experience. You went to India and you wanted to know it from inside out. The conscious.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that was really a turning point for me. I was fascinated by science. As you mentioned at the beginning, I was a mathematician. I loved it and still love it. I'm still, always exploring things there. And I realized that however much physics, science I did, it was never going to answer the question of why are we aware? Why is there awareness? That was the question I was pondering at the time. And it was paradoxical because all of science happens in the mind, really. I mean, we do experiments in the world, but all our theories, our conclusions, all of that happens in the mind. So human consciousness is a critical tool in science, because that's where we do the work, as well as the physical experiments. And yet there was nothing in science that could explain why we were aware. Science could explain everything that happens, and it's almost like scientists would be much happier if we're all just biological robots without any experience. And so that fascinated me, this question that the one thing that science can never explain is, why are we aware? And that took me off. I started looking at meditation, spirituality, got me interested in Indian thought, and that became a theme for my life. And the realization I came to after a while was, it's the wrong question. It's not why are we aware. It's just accepting, yes, we are. Consciousness is fundamental. The question more is, why do we experience the world like this? It's the other way around. It's not how did the world give rise to awareness? How did our consciousness give rise to this experience I'm having right now? So that was really a turning point for me.
Yeah. So you also meditated a lot, and you explored it from within.
Yes, meditation's been an important part of my life since then. I started then. I started with TM, Transcendental Meditation, and that was a very profound thing for me. I think the teachings of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi I found them very formative, and still a lot of what I see in terms of spirituality comes from those times. But then I've been involved in Buddhist teachings, Buddhist practices. The Course in Miracles, you may have heard of it, that was very important for me. So I've learned from different traditions, and in a way put it all together. And every tradition in some way is saying, you can boil it down to two words: let go. Every tradition in some way or another is coming back to those two words: let go.
Yeah, and just be with what is, and do your best, I guess, right?
Yeah, and in a way we are all doing our best. We're all doing our best all the time. We do our best, and some of us have very limited abilities, very limited perceptions. We're limited in different ways, and so we're always doing our best. But then at the same time, how can we remove the limitations that's stopping our best being even better? So yeah, that comes back to what we've been saying here about stepping out of all those unnecessary thoughts and concerns and worries and desires that in a way keep us trapped. And so the letting go is letting go of what's behind them, so that we just see the world in a different way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it. And your website, so people can find you.
Yes, it's very simple, peterrussell.com, with 2 L's on the Russell, otherwise you end up somewhere else. peterrussell.com will take you there, and there's hundreds of articles there and lots of videos and meditations and different things and lectures I've given.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.